Depression does not always begin in your thoughts. It often begins much deeper, inside the hidden chemistry of your brain, where tiny imbalances silently change how you feel, how you think, and how you experience life itself. Most people spend years fighting depression mentally, never realizing the real cause may be biological, rooted in damaged brain chemicals and a weakened gut-brain connection that controls emotional stability. But scientists have now uncovered certain rare and mysterious foods that can directly repair brain chemistry, restore neurotransmitter balance, and help the brain escape the trapped state of anxiety and emotional darkness. And the first one works by repairing the damaged communication line between your gut and your brain. Number 1. Sauerkraut. Most people believe depression lives in the mind, but what if the real control center of your mood is not in your brain at all? What if it is in your gut? This sounds unbelievable, but your gut produces nearly 90% of your serotonin, the chemical that creates feelings of calm, stability, and emotional balance. When your gut bacteria become damaged, serotonin production begins to fall. And when serotonin falls, the brain enters a vulnerable state. Negative thoughts become stronger, emotional resilience becomes weaker, and depression begins tightening its grip silently. This is where an ancient fermented food becomes incredibly powerful: sauerkraut. At first glance, it looks simple, but inside it contains living probiotic organisms that directly rebuild the gut environment responsible for producing mood-regulating chemicals. These beneficial bacteria begin restoring balance. They reduce inflammation that interferes with brain signaling, and they reactivate the biological pathway that allows serotonin to be produced naturally. As this process strengthens, something remarkable happens. The brain begins receiving stable emotional signals again. Mood starts stabilizing, mental heaviness begins to lift, and the nervous system slowly exits survival mode. Dr. Imran Mayer, author of The Mind-Gut Connection, explains that the gut microbiome directly controls brain chemistry and emotional health through constant biochemical communication with the brain. This means repairing the gut can directly influence how you feel, how you respond to stress, and how stable your emotions remain. But gut repair alone cannot fix depression if the brain itself lacks the raw material. Number 2. Kelp seaweed. There is a hidden system inside your body that controls how stable or unstable your mood feels, and most people never realize when this system begins to fail. It is called the thyroid-brain connection. This system regulates the speed of your brain, the balance of your emotions, and the production of dopamine, the chemical that creates motivation, pleasure, and emotional strength. When this system weakens, dopamine levels fall. And when dopamine falls, everything changes. Motivation disappears. Emotional numbness begins. Even simple tasks feel overwhelming. This is where a mysterious ocean plant becomes incredibly powerful: seaweed, especially kelp. Seaweed contains concentrated iodine and tyrosine, two essential nutrients the brain depends on to produce dopamine and maintain emotional balance. Without iodine, the thyroid cannot properly regulate brain activity. Without tyrosine, dopamine cannot be produced efficiently. This creates a silent chemical shutdown inside emotional control centers. But when seaweed provides these nutrients, the system begins to reactivate. Dopamine production improves, emotional stability strengthens, and the brain regains its ability to maintain motivation and psychological resilience. Dr. Lisa Mosconi, author of Brain Food, explains that brain chemistry and emotional health depend heavily on specific nutrients that support neurotransmitter production and hormonal balance. This means something as simple as a sea plant can directly influence how stable or unstable your emotional state becomes. But scientists discovered an even stranger fruit that directly lowers. Number 3. Avocado. There's a silent chemical reaction happening inside your brain every second that determines whether you feel emotionally stable or emotionally trapped. And one of the most important elements controlling this reaction is folate. Folate is not just a vitamin. It is a critical building block your brain uses to produce serotonin, the neurotransmitter responsible for feelings of calm, safety, and emotional balance. When folate levels drop, serotonin production slows down. And when serotonin slows down, the brain becomes more vulnerable to depression, anxiety, and emotional instability. This is where one unusual tropical fruit becomes incredibly powerful: avocado. Avocado contains exceptionally high levels of natural folate in a form the brain can easily use. Once absorbed, this folate begins restoring the brain's ability to produce serotonin efficiently. It also protects delicate neurotransmitter systems from damage caused by inflammation and stress. This allows brain cells to communicate more clearly, emotional signals stabilize, and the nervous system begins shifting out of the depressed state. Dr. Drew Ramsey, author of Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety, explains that folate-rich foods play a critical role in supporting neurotransmitter production and emotional stability. This means something as simple as avocado can help restore the chemical balance your brain depends on to function normally. But emotional stability also depends on something even more fundamental. The electrical. Number 4. Brazil nuts. There is a hidden electrical storm that begins inside the brain when anxiety and depression take hold. This storm is not visible, but it is very real. It is caused by instability in the brain's stress control circuits. And one of the most critical elements that stabilizes these circuits is a rare mineral called selenium. Selenium acts like a protective regulator. It shields brain cells from oxidative damage. It stabilizes neurotransmitter activity, and it helps control the stress signals that can push the brain into chronic anxiety and emotional exhaustion. But when selenium levels fall, brain cells become vulnerable. Stress signals become overactive, emotional control weakens, and the brain becomes trapped in a constant state of tension and instability. This is where Brazil nuts become incredibly powerful. Brazil nuts are the richest natural source of selenium on Earth. Just small amounts provide the exact mineral the brain needs to calm overactive stress pathways. Once selenium levels are restored, something remarkable begins to happen. Brain cells become more protected, stress circuits begin to stabilize, and the nervous system slowly exits its hyperactive state. Emotional balance becomes easier to maintain. Mental calmness begins to return. Dr. Mark Hyman explains that mineral deficiencies can directly disrupt brain function and emotional regulation, making proper nutrient intake essential for restoring mental stability. This means something as small as a missing mineral can silently control how stable or unstable your emotional state becomes. But even this cannot fully repair depression unless brain cells themselves. Number 5. Saffron. For thousands of years, there was a golden spice so rare and mysterious that it was valued more than gold itself. But what ancient civilizations never fully understood is that this spice has a direct and powerful effect on the emotional control centers of your brain. This spice is saffron, and modern neuroscience has revealed something extraordinary about it. Saffron contains unique bioactive compounds that directly support serotonin balance, the very chemical that determines whether your brain feels calm or emotionally unstable. When serotonin becomes disrupted, emotional control weakens. Negative thoughts intensify, and the brain becomes more vulnerable to depression, but saffron works at the root of this problem. Its compounds help protect serotonin pathways from damage. They reduce inflammation that interferes with emotional regulation, and they support the brain's natural ability to maintain emotional stability. This allows neurons to communicate more clearly. Emotional signals become balanced, and the brain begins shifting out of the depressive state. What makes this even more remarkable is that clinical research has shown saffron can significantly improve symptoms of depression by directly influencing neurotransmitter balance. Dr. Michael Greger, author of How Not to Die, explains that certain natural compounds can protect brain chemistry and help restore emotional health when they target inflammation and neurotransmitter pathways. This means something as small as a golden spice can influence the deepest emotional circuits of your brain. But the next discovery shocked scientists even more, because they found a rare root that does not just protect the brain. It feeds the beneficial bacteria that. Number 6. Jerusalem artichoke. Hidden deep inside your gut are trillions of microscopic organisms that silently control how you feel every single day. Most people never realize this, because these bacteria do not just help digestion. They help produce the very chemicals that determine whether you feel calm or depressed. When beneficial bacteria begin to disappear, serotonin production weakens, emotional stability collapses, and the brain becomes more vulnerable to anxiety and depression. This is where one forgotten root becomes incredibly powerful: Jerusalem artichoke. This root contains rare prebiotic fibers that do not feed you. They feed the beneficial bacteria living inside your gut, and when these bacteria receive the right fuel, they begin multiplying and restoring balance. As they grow stronger, they restart the biological process that allows serotonin to be produced naturally. Inflammation begins to decrease, brain communication becomes more stable, and emotional regulation begins to recover. This is not a psychological effect. This is a biological repair process happening deep inside your gut-brain axis. Dr. David Perlmutter, author of Brain Maker, explains that feeding beneficial gut bacteria is one of the most powerful ways to restore brain health and emotional stability. This means the right prebiotic food can slowly help the brain escape the chemical state of depression. But none of these compare to the final discovery, because scientists found one rare natural substance that directly acts. Number 7 and last one, moringa leaves. There is a stress signal inside your brain that silently determines whether you feel calm or constantly overwhelmed. This signal is controlled by a hormone called cortisol. And when cortisol remains elevated for too long, it begins damaging the emotional regulation centers of the brain. Memory weakens, emotional stability collapses, and the brain becomes trapped in a constant state of anxiety and exhaustion. Most people never realize their brain is stuck in this survival mode. This is where a forgotten adaptogenic leaf becomes incredibly powerful: moringa leaves. Moringa contains rare bioactive compounds that help regulate cortisol levels and protect the brain from chronic stress damage. These compounds calm overactive stress circuits. They reduce inflammation inside emotional control centers, and they help restore balance to the nervous system. As cortisol levels stabilize, something remarkable begins to happen. The brain exits its defensive state. Emotional clarity improves, and the constant feeling of mental heaviness begins to fade. Dr. Andrew Weil, author of Healthy Aging, explains that plant compounds with adaptogenic properties can help the body regulate stress responses and protect brain function from long-term damage. This means stabilizing stress hormones can directly influence how safe, calm, and emotionally balanced your brain feels. But here is the truth most people never realize: life